Hey boys and girls, so I'm Mr. Allen. I'm going to be your science teacher this year. I'm going to go over a lot of really cool units with you. Okay, we're going to talk about the human body, we're going to talk about ecosystems, we're going to talk about forces in motion, we're going to talk a lot about Sir Isaac Newton. I'm sure some of you guys have probably heard of him, one of the greatest scientists ever. And we're also going to start talking about weather. Weather is going to be our first unit that we talk about because it's a really large unit and it's kind of difficult to understand. And I always like to start with the hard stuff first because then we can always talk about it through the year and we're not trying to fit it all in at the end of the year and you're confused. So we're going to start with the hardest part. And I'll be here to support you 100%. And I've gone over this stuff thousands of times and I can help you as much as you need, okay? But first thing we're gonna do today is we're just gonna talk. I'm gonna give you some really cool facts about the Earth. And obviously this is our world right here. You can see right here, you can see Africa, there's Madagascar. You can see the Middle East right there, and then obviously right here, here's North America, there's the tip of Florida, there's South America, and there's Central America. Way up here is Alaska, so I kind of got both sides of the Earth playing right here. Now, what I want you to realize first is that the Earth is a very, very large place, obviously, to us anyway. Now, there are two things on each one of these pictures that the Earth is basically composed of, okay? And what are those two things? What are the two things that dominate both of these Earths that I have up here? Okay, and I want you to think about that for a second. If you answered land and water, then you are correct. Land and water dominate the Earth. And if you see all these white things, those are clouds. Clouds are made of water. So basically the Earth is made of those two things. We got about 75% of the Earth, roughly, is water. And I'm going to call it H2O a lot. We use that term a lot. And then the rest of it is going to be land, 25%. So these two things right here, this land and this water, is what basically makes the weather. Along with one other thing that I'm going to tell you in just a second. It's going to blow your mind. So kind of remember that. All right, land and water. We're going to talk about that a lot. Talk about land and water and how they kind of mix and how they mingle together. That is definitely going to be something we're going to be talking about, okay? So, don't forget that because I am definitely going to be referring to that quite a bit. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is just a basic solar system picture. I got this off the internet and it's got all the planets lined up from the sun. This is supposed to be our sun, okay? First planet's Mercury, Venus, there we are, we're Earth, right here, okay? And then you have Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and if you're an old man like me, Pluto's way, way out here, but they don't consider Pluto a planet anymore because they found so many little planets out there that look like Pluto, they don't want to call it a planet anymore. The reason I'm showing you this picture is because of where we're sitting, okay? We are sitting in a perfect spot for life, okay? There is no life on Mercury, there is no life on Venus, there is no life on Mars. These four are made of gas, so you couldn't even virtually stand on these. You would sink down to the bottom, and all of their atmospheres are toxic for the most part. We can't handle their atmospheres. And on top of that, they don't have oxygen on them, okay? We are sitting in the #1 spot for life, okay? We get just enough heat from the sun so that we can stay warm and that our plants can grow and that we can get oxygen from our plants. All these other ones, there is no life on them. So we're in a really, really, really great spot, all right? This guy right here, he's gonna be a major factor we talk a lot about. okay, in this weather unit we're going to talk about, because the sun drives the earth. If it weren't for the sun, we would not be here, okay? So we're going to talk a lot about the sun and how important it is to everything that we kind of like have to deal with on a daily basis. You know, sometimes we don't want a bunch of rain, but we gotta have it. You know, sometimes it's way too hot. Sometimes we gotta have that heat, okay? So, we're sitting in this perfect spot, and look at how small we are compared to all the other ones. We seem like we're really, really big, but we're actually really, really small when it comes to everything in the infinite space that we're living in, all right? So the next thing we're going to talk about is this. I got the words hang on right there. Why would I have that? Well, the reason that I put that up there is because, as you know, we spin all the time. We're constantly spinning. We're spinning around, and not only are we spinning around and revolving, we're also spinning around the sun as well. So we got both of those spins going around. Now there's a couple of things that I'm going to talk about on this right here before I tell you why I got the words hang on there. Right here in the middle of the earth, there is an imaginary line that cuts this basketball looking sphere into two parts. And the name of this line is called the equator. Okay? Now the equator, since it sits right in the middle and it's the outside part, this is going to be the hottest part of the earth. Okay, so if you live down near the equator, you know that it's extremely hot. Okay? The other two parts we're going to talk about are the poles. You got the North Pole. Down here at the bottom, you have the South Pole. Okay? These are going to be the coldest parts of the earth. Okay? So right here at the wide part, the equator, you're going to be super hot. And at the bottoms, you're going to be super cold. And the reason these two places are so cold is because the sun cannot reach them as well as they can the equator. Okay? And we're going to talk a lot about that in the future. But why did I put hang on there? Well, the reason I did is because of how fast we're spinning, how fast we're rotating. Could any of you even imagine how fast we're going right now? Now, the reason you don't feel any speed right now is because you are attached to the earth, and you are part of the earth. You are part of its inertia. You are basically at one with the earth, so you don't feel this extreme speed that we're going at right now. Now, if we lived at the equator, which we don't, we live right about there. And we live about midway almost between the equator and the North Pole. But if we lived on the equator, do you know how fast it's going? You live on the equator, you're going about 1,000 miles per hour. That's how fast you would be going if you could actually feel it. Now, if you lived up at the pole, which you don't have to make as big as large as a rotation at the equator, you'd probably be going about 300 miles an hour, which is still fast. Faster than any NASCAR driver can go. So I want you to think about that as well. Just the immense speed we're going on. Why don't we fly off the earth? If we're going that fast, why don't we get whipped off into space? That's something else we're going to talk about in the near future, but not quite yet. Now, northern and southern. We're going to talk about weather in the northern and the southern hemisphere, okay? So what we're going to have to learn, and you don't have to learn it today, is the compass rose, okay? And the compass rose is this right here. It is north, south, east, and west, okay? You gotta know this because we're gonna be talking about wind direction, and we're gonna talk about some other things where you need to know the direction at which things are going, okay? And here's another reason. If you go and you make the line through the earth just like that, and you cut it in half, and what did I call this guy right here? The equator. Then it splits the earth into two even half spheres, okay? This sphere up here, the one we live in, is the northern hemisphere. Okay? Now obviously if this is the northern hemisphere, then down here is going to be the southern hemisphere. I'm going to give you a really cool thing to think about. We're on the top, they're on the bottom, and guess what? What season are we going through right now? We're in the middle of summer, right? Guess what season the southern hemisphere is in right now as we're speaking? They're in the middle of winter. So even though we're a little bit different, land and water on both, the top and the bottom, we're going through different seasons. And that's all because of the sun and the angle of the sun on the earth. And we're going to talk more about this later, okay? A lot later, actually. We got to learn the water cycle and some other things before we start talking about the seasons in the northern and the southern hemisphere. But these are things that I kind of need you to sort of know, all right? Now the last thing on here is going to be one of the most important things we're going to talk about in weather, and that is the sun. Our sun is vital to our presence on earth. It gives us light, it gives us warmth, it helps our plants go through photosynthesis, it gives us food. It is basically the giver of life. And back years and years and years ago, people didn't worship Jesus or any of the Buddha. They didn't worship that. They worshiped the sun because they knew that without the sun they would not be able to live. And right here, I put this picture up here just to let you know kind of how small we are. So you saw how large our sun was when I showed you this picture right here. So you can see how large the sun is, all right, compared to Earth. We could fit thousands of Earths inside of our sun. But when we start going into the infinite space, we're really, really tiny. So this is our sun right here, okay? That's what our sun looks like compared to some of the other giant stars in space. This guy right here, his name is Sirius, and he is out every single night in the night sky. Every single night you can see Sirius. I can't tell you how to find it. It's just one of the brightest stars in the sky at night. Too far away to give us light like the sun, but still a huge, huge star. And this guy right here, Arcturus, is one of the largest stars in the universe that we found. We're still out there looking for large stars. But without the sun, we would not have any life, and we certainly wouldn't have any weather. And the sun has a huge influence on our weather because of the way it heats up the land and the water, which is why I showed you that first part, okay, that first slide with the land and the water. The sun does some things to the land and the water that makes weather start to happen. And we're going to talk a lot about that in the next few, it'll probably take us at least 8 weeks to get through the weather. So by the time you guys get back to school, we'll hopefully be done with the weather. So that's pretty much all I have for you today. I'm going to give you 5 questions at the end of this video for you to answer. They're going to be multiple choice, and do the best you can, okay? I look forward to teaching you, and I really enjoy doing this. It's a lot of fun for me to talk to you about our earth and the weather and the human body. So just make sure that if you don't understand it, you drop me a line, okay? And I'll talk to you on Tuesday. All right. Have a good day.